Hi, this is Amanda.
And this is Jen.
And you're listening to Just This, a podcast that explores everything around being and becoming a mother or parent.
We're excited to have you join us as we dive into the practical details as well as the unseen energetics on topics that span from preconception to years after birth.
Okay, today we thought we would talk about a little area of expertise for Jen, acupuncture and acupressure. And we'll try to keep this mostly in the basics, but I know it's hard for an expert. I'm just going to preface that to keep things basic because there's probably so many layers and so far you could go with this. And it was so funny because she was like, let me prep something. And you don't need to prep anything. I could just ask you questions. And there's a lot of directions you can go in with acupressure and acupuncture, I'm sure. And two of the things we were thinking is there's pregnancy, there's postpartum for the mama, so acupressure or puncture for the mama during pregnancy, and you could even break that down probably into the trimesters. You could do it pre-pregnancy for fertility and consumption. You could do it post-birth for postpartum window, and then also for baby, which I thought that would be a really interesting one too. So that'll be a future podcast discussion of acupressure for baby, and I'm sure even puncture, but most probably parents would feel there's baby massage is a big thing, and people hear all the time taking baby massage classes. And if you're doing baby massage, you might as well do acupressure. And I even had somebody recently ask me, like, what is something I can do to help for pooping? And acupressure points are great, even for postpartum mom. But today we're going to focus on pregnancy. Do you feel like we need to break it down into trimesters, or should we just do a general pregnancy overview?
Let's just do a general, and then if we feel in the future we want to break it down. And yeah, acupuncture, I did acupuncture on my son when he was 2 or 3 days old, so you can do it on them too. But yeah let's focus on.
I think you can do it on babies, right?
That's what I mean. He was 2 or 3 days old.
Yeah. Oh, days. I thought you said years.
Yeah. No, days. Yeah. It's great. And kids are they're like way more receptive than we are as humans, as not humans.
Yeah, there's no blocks. Their body is hopefully very
generally more clear. Yeah. We carry a lot. Did you have any questions particularly, or?
Well, when I was pregnant, I was getting acupuncture just because I had been getting it prior and I believe in it. I don't know. My depth of knowledge around acupuncture isn't very expansive, probably beyond what most people's who are receiving it is. And then when it was after the baby, I found out that actually the postpartum phase was supposedly, from a Chinese perspective and with acupuncture, more important than during the pregnancy, which I found interesting. I guess I could start with that, maybe the question of why postpartum is considered more important, and then why somebody would even get acupuncture or use acupressure during pregnancy. I mean, I know there's a bajillion reasons of alleviating symptoms, but if somebody, let's say, is having a healthy pregnancy and everything's going well, why would you recommend for them to incorporate acupuncture or acupressure?
Yeah. So for a healthy pregnancy, acupuncture helps in a lot of ways. Like, one of the big things is stress. There's research on it. It helps reduce stress. I also recommend it because not just the stress aspect, but if baby is breech, so that means that the butt is down, the bottom is down, then baby, when we do acupuncture to try to turn baby, the chances that they will turn will be better because your body already knows about acupuncture. It already knows how to respond. It's kind of like, oh, I remember this, as opposed to like attempting to do something for the first time to the body and not just do something tiny like, oh, let me help reduce stress, like turn baby, when it's probably already, starting to come down. Obviously not get engaged, because once it's engaged, you can't turn baby like that necessarily. Not easily, let's put it that way, with acupuncture. And then two, that's like the main reason, because in the future, like, your body is already ready for it. And acupuncture is just a branch of Chinese medicine. So I'm going to probably be using both terms here a little bit. Acupuncture is actually the insertion of needles, or for kids, I call it taps. The acupuncture aspect of it is to help regulate and balance the body. And one thing I find with a lot of women, especially in pregnancy and more so in the postpartum period, is a lot of kind of diseases kind of come up, things that when before pregnancy, they seemed normal and totally healthy. And then after into the postpartum period, they're not. And the other thing too with acupuncture and Chinese medicine, depending on your acupuncturist, because they might use herbs and massage and those type of things like you're talking about, it just helps to regulate the body and keep it in a balanced state because you know from just like working with women, your hormones are all over the place. You're eventually going to be starting to take things from your body to give to the baby, and you're growing a baby, right? So you want to be able to make sure that you're at your optimal health. And it's in that way, if you are perfectly healthy, it's a way to maintain that and to also prep for the postpartum period as well, because it's everything's like in the bank, right? Like you're going along in pregnancy, everything's going good. And then you have a marathon of a birth, even if it's 4 hours, 4 hours, if you were running, that's still a marathon, right? So you're having this marathon, and then you go into the postpartum period where you start going through sleep deprivation, you're sleeping every 2 hours. And there's research out now that says your body's not even back to that 2 hour period. So it's just slowly taking care of things early on. That way, when things come up, it's like a faster recognition.
I would say that's my experience for sure. I unfortunately didn't get it postpartum. I wish it was a little bit easier. And one thing I recommend for people when we get to the postpartum things that you find somebody to come to you, because that's like the catch 22 is you're not
Mhm.
supposed to really leave in postpartum.
Yes.
Going to a place for acupuncture can be stressful with with a newborn baby. But I say during pregnancy when I was receiving it, for sure, it's that whole just knowing that you're bringing things back into balance, and also the whole relieving stress, as you put it. I think just balancing the nervous system
Yep.
in general. There's so much going on, and overall just having that like kind of smoother waves as like
Mhm.
waves approach, especially as I got into my later stages of pregnancy. It was considered more high risk, and I just felt really, really confident and smooth through that whole part. It kind of just helped kind of balance all of it, and potentially helped with the healthiness of myself and my baby, even though Western medicine was like, this is so, they want to keep their stats and what
Right.
it is. And I get it, healthy baby and healthy mama, they were really concerned. But overall, I think I was able to know and tune into my intuition a little bit better using that too. Let's say there's a lot of people out there who potentially don't like the needles, which is
Mhm.
fine. And can you speak a little bit to the effectiveness of acupressure versus acupuncture? Is it just as effective or 50% effective? Like, what would you say to that part? Should people use acupressure? All the things.
Yeah, I think so. One more thing I want to add too, just before I get into that about pregnancy, they're also done research where if you look at acupuncture prior to childbirth, about 2 weeks, even like a month on a regular basis, 1 to 3 times a week, actually have shorter births in general. So I just want to throw that out there too. Again, everything is, there's no guarantee, but that's also something. And I think a lot of that does have to do a little bit with the stress. If your body's stressed out, it's going to be tense and it's going to be hard to let go and release and to listen, like you said, to your body.
The other thing I
So,
think that plays into that, and I was on the train of I will do anything to shorten my labor. And like
yeah.
I'd heard so many things, and I remember my partner saying, I'm not sure if that's 100% proven or accurate. I'm like, I don't care. It's not going to hurt me if I do it, and I'm willing to do it all. I think the other part of that is it's biologically, if you're doing acupuncture or potentially even acupressure, like things like fluids and inflammation are
Mhm.
probably flushing out or
Yeah.
getting more balanced. And that was a big thing I had read, that if you're if you hold inflammation in your body, your birth's going to be longer, because
Yep.
obviously the tissues and your birth canal are more inflamed. Therefore, it's harder for pushing the baby out. But if you're moving those fluids through your
Mhm.
system. And that's why they say to exercise and move,
Yeah.
to be honest. It
Yep.
helps move those fluids. So, yes, and all that to yes,
Absolutely.
and a biological reason throwing in there too.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, again, preparing for a race, right? Like a marathon. Like those racers, they probably get massages, they're probably getting acupuncture, they're eating right. You know what I mean? They're doing all those things. Doesn't mean they're going to win the race necessarily, but they're doing all the stuff they can to make it the best opportunity for them to. And as far as acupuncture versus acupressure, the effectiveness, I really do find acupuncture a little bit more effective, but that doesn't mean it's not effective at all. I find acupressure a lot more effective on kids, again, because they're just a little bit more open. I think they don't have a lot of the mental blocks that we have, that we kind of like go through life and, get hurt and harmed. And so we have belief systems and stuff around that. But again, acupressure is the same points that you'd use for acupuncture. It's just less directed, right? Like if you put your finger into a point, there's more surface area. So the direction of that point is not so specific and gets in there. And also, too, one thing I noticed with acupuncture is generally, except with kids, that's different. We retain needles for about 10 to 15 minutes. And there's something that happens to the nervous system when you're kind of forced to lay down with, I'm going to call it taps because some people don't like the term needles. There's something about that too. It's almost like a meditative state as well. And I think that really helps with the acupuncture aspect of it. And a lot of times, acupressure is usually used by people that aren't acupuncturists. And so they have a different view of where the points are. So that might also play into it a little bit as well.
I think acupressure is a great thing to build in. I recommend doing both, to be honest, because I always recommend having your partner or someone massage you and really get a lot of touch in your pregnancy.
Hmm.
And it's a great thing to incorporate, I think, if somebody, especially for somebody who isn't used to giving massage, they're often like, well, what do I do? And
Hmm.
but I think giving them some specific points, like acupressure points, is nice because they can do like, okay, I'm gonna like massage for a few minutes, and then it gives them something to focus on,
Hmm.
which sometimes people like that, and then they feel more quote unquote effective rather
Hmm.
than a little bit lost in what they're doing. What would be if somebody was going to incorporate some acupressure points into a massage they're giving to a pregnant person? What would be ones that you recommend? Like maybe, I don't know, you can anywhere from 3 to 5, let's say.
3 to 5. Okay. Again,
What
this
are your
is like
top three? We'll have that
top
top
three.
three.
Okay. Generally, in my population, I always pick points based on what the person is presenting with, and then also what I see as a practitioner. But most clients that I see that are pregnant and they come in, I will do a stress point for them. So that's a liver 2 or 3 point. And then I usually do something that's uplifting because in pregnancy, we don't want a lot of dropping of the baby. Like we want baby to be held in and up. And also just working with a lot of preconception infertility. That's a lot of what we're doing is like we're trying to uplift because of the risk of miscarriage and loss of the pregnancy. But that continues. Like we want to hold, right? Like we want to hold for the next 9 months. So there's a point up at the top, and that's due 20. And who doesn't really love like a good head massage, right? And then the other one is just to really support mom and baby. And that's usually like a kidney 3 point, which is you can just Google these, just put in because it'll be too hard to
We'll
explain.
put them in the show notes
So
too. We can link some things in
perfect.
the show notes. And then once you talk about the last one, just maybe
Hmm.
you could give like a brief description. You told the last one was on the head. Where's the liver
Top
two
on
and
the
three?
head. Liver 2 and 3 is in between the big toe and the toe next to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that
And
soft,
then
juicy part. I know
exactly
what you're
right in
talking about.
there. And
Yeah.
then
It feels
also
good
got,
to touch it, just like using
yeah,
my mouth.
yeah. And as acupuncturists, there's points that we don't use, and those are points that we consider actually a downward type of energy. So
So
actually,
hold on,
like,
hold on. For the
yeah,
first three ones, so we
yeah,
got the liver 2, 3, which is
hmm,
between the toe and this little toe.
yeah,
Then we got the top of the head. What do you call that one?
do 20,
Jus 20.
do
Du
20.
do
Hmm.
20. Okay, around the top.
Yep,
And then what
yep.
was the third one?
And then third one is usually kidney 3.
Where's
And
that?
that's kind of between your ankle and like the back of your leg, like kind of
Okay.
into there.
I had been
Mhm.
taught, I'm curious though, I
Yeah.
had been taught to not massage around the ankles during
Oh, okay.
pregnancy because there's points that are dropping points.
Yes, there are some points there that you have to be careful of.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm go ahead into the contradiction
Yeah.
points. Let's go into
Yeah.
those.
So, yeah, so I'll just kind of briefly describe. I think, really, in my opinion, if you're doing acupuncture, we're talking a whole other story here, but massage, I really do feel a lot is based on intention that goes into it. And there's even like fertility and pregnancy acupuncturists that will go and do things that are actually contraindicated in pregnancy and will still do those points. So I'm not saying to do that, but like massaging, how many times did you get a massage probably pregnant and you're massaging on the shoulder? And there's like one of those points is at the like highest point of your shoulder. And that's one of the points that you just don't do in pregnancy because of the downward effect. But we all get massaged on the shoulder, and no babies just like pop out, birth doesn't happen. And even too, as an acupuncturist, it's so interesting because we think of all these contraindicated points. And when someone comes in because they want to initiate labor, you're hitting all those points with acupuncture and you're stimulating them, and like baby's just not coming out. And I don't say that to encourage it, but just to also like relax. Like if you're getting a massage, just really enjoy it and feel the love as opposed to stressing out about hitting points, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the other point that I really love and a lot of clients love is yin tong. And that's like right in between the center of the eyebrows. Yeah. And it's the
If you guys
purpose
could
that
see
Wednesday
us, we're just touching ourselves right
touching the
now. All the
middle of
points.
our
What's the
eyebrows. And
purpose
this
of this
one's
one?
just calming. This one's like a very mind calming, relaxing point. And it's interesting too, because we do acupressure a lot on our own, right? When we're stressed out, some people like pinch the middle
I
of their
love
forehead, right?
massaging my eyebrows personally.
Yes.
That's
And
always
there's
like my
tons of
favorite thing to do is rub my
Yeah,
eyebrows.
and there's tons of points there, and as I'm watching you do it too, like, you're even starting to hit that yin tong point, which is right in that center right there.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff, like you said, with pregnancy is we really do wanna keep everything calm, we wanna keep everything stress-free, right? I mean, there's already articles out there about the stress of mother on the baby, or if you don't
Mhm.
identify as a mother, then pregnant person, and the stress on baby as well, so it's really about that. Stress to me is like the biggest thing that I encounter always underlying with almost every client. And I think that's just part of the world that we're in. And then, of course, there's points to help with other things like nausea, vomiting, wrist pain is another big one, carpal tunnel that comes up. All those type of things can also help, but those are more
Maybe we can
treated.
make some future guide of
Yeah, to how
acupressure
to do it.
points
Yes.
for different symptoms during pregnancy or
Yes.
postpartum or things like that.
And then just to get into the postpartum real quick aspect, they do believe it's more important because essentially they feel that after birth, all of the channels are just opened. And so we have, and this
Mhm.
is why they want you in for 40 days because they believe that wind can enter the body and create problems. Cold can enter the body, toxic heat can. All the elements that we experience can actually enter into the body and create issues. And when you're totally open and receptive to those, they can enter. And then as it slowly starts to close in that postpartum period, they can get like trapped and locked in there. And there's also some belief of practitioners that believe if you had some sort of illness before pregnancy, the ideal time to actually treat it is during that 40-day postpartum because everything is open and you are so receptive to receiving it. And so that's why they really feel that that postpartum period needs to be so nourished. 40 days in, don't go out, limit
That'll
visitors,
be
and then take care of the body.
we
Yeah.
have we'll link to their first 40 days podcast episode, dives
Hmm.
deeper into that. We touch, I think, on acupuncture there, and
Yeah.
I'm sure our postpartum acupuncture one is gonna be a
Yeah.
longer episode.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I heard that when I was in my postpartum phase, and there's so many questions and directions I want to go there when we get to that
Yeah.
part.
One could be a
But don't
full.
let it deter you from doing it during pregnancy. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing. When we get to postpartum, I think the biggest thing is what I would have done differently is plan how I would have
Hmm.
incorporated, and knowing, being told that you're not going to be able to go somewhere with that
Yeah.
baby. It's going to be really hard. But
It's
that's a hard
it's
thing for people to
challenging.
really understand until they have their
Yeah.
first baby sometimes too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so back to pregnancy. Anything else that you want to mention or say? I just want to encourage, if you didn't incorporate acupressure or acupuncture in your fertility journey and you're in the stages of pregnancy now, this is a great time to start incorporating acupressure, acupuncture. I also want to encourage, much like anything else, if you're only able to get it twice a month or once a month, do it. It's better than
Mhm.
nothing.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, you gotta go like 2 times a week." And for some people, that's just not possible. So
Right.
anything's better than nothing. And then again,
Hmm.
if you don't have access to acupuncture or
Hmm.
you have fear, which I strongly encourage people who have the fear of the tabs to just try it
Yeah.
once and let the practitioner know that. And they'll do some
Hmm.
easy points like on your feet or
Hmm.
just on your arms, somewhere you can see it or not see it. You can have a whole conversation with them, but practitioners are great of working with you to kind of show you you don't even feel anything. You
Yeah.
literally do not feel anything when they put the tab in.
A lot of them, yeah, a lot of them you won't. There are some more aggressive acupuncturists that want you to really feel what they call the chi, but a
Well,
lot of them
find the
won't.
ones that
And
aren't aggressive if you're
yes,
if you're
exactly.
a fear of that. But I encourage people
Exactly.
who say like they're afraid of it to like try it once. Like I think
Yeah.
getting your ears pierced hurts more
Oh,
probably.
for sure. And also, this is the other thing too, tell clients when they come in is that when we talk about needles, like our mind automatically thinks vaccination needles are like at least, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches long and they have a hole in them. So they're actually injecting stuff into us. These needles that we're talking about are about the thickness of your hair. There's no hole in them and they're just inserted very, very quickly and then retained.
Yeah, you don't
So
feel it at all. I
no.
also want to encourage, like, if you're an absolutely no to that, just that's why I wanted to bring up acupressure
Yeah.
because you can incorporate the acupressure. Doing something's better than nothing. And
Hmm.
so, again, and then also building, if you're starting this now, it's going to be easier to incorporate later too.
Hmm.
So, if you have a partner and they're used to these points now, even though you're in the overwhelm of new baby phase, once you get to
Yeah.
postpartum, you'll have a little bit of practice behind doing this, kind of like a practice of self-care. And so that can be easier if you've already built on that before having the baby. It could just be an easier thing to incorporate. If you are in your pregnancy and you haven't done it before, I strongly encourage you to at least like try to incorporate acupressure. If you have the ability to do
Yes.
acupuncture, go as much as you can. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was lucky I had it every 2 to 3 days during my pregnancy, and I had
wow. That's because
yeah, it
you
was great.
work in the
Did
industry.
have an in-house
Yeah.
acupuncturist. Yeah, at the time, the time my husband was acupuncturist, so that helped. It also like proved to me like how powerful that medicine is and also to be able to treat things that came up immediately. Because if I started to feel a little off, it's like, oh hey, let's just get some acupuncture real quick. And again, I know that's not something for everybody, but even if you getting some acupuncture twice a month and then in between doing acupressure, that's going to be extremely powerful. And acupressure doesn't have to be long. It could be like 5, 10 minutes. It can be a very short thing. So I think just like you said, give it a try if you have access to it. And a lot of insurance companies now will actually pay for
Mm.
it too.
Yeah, I guess
So,
this goes
look
into
into that.
a good question that people might have is if you are going the acupuncture route, how would you go about finding like what would you recommend as somebody who's a midwife and acupuncturist
Acupuncture.
about finding a good acupuncturist to work with?
Yeah, I would look for someone that specializes in pregnancy or has experience in it or the postpartum period, even preconception, because they already have a little bit of that knowledge. That's where I would start. Ask around. There's mama groups and stuff like that. Ask in there. Usually someone has something. And then when you go, just get a feeling. It's also a relationship, right? That you build. Like I build relationship with all of my clients, even if they're short, even if we only see each other for a few times. So you want to also feel comfortable and relaxed. There's nothing worse than having going into an acupuncture appointment more stressed out than to just go in and like, okay, at least I feel comfortable with this person if I'm afraid, and now I can actually get the treatment
Yeah,
some
and as you
sessions
said,
in.
most insurance companies now cover
Hmm.
acupuncture, so
Yeah.
definitely look into that. And the other thing with finding a provider I wanted to mention as well is if cost is a
Hmm.
prohibitive for you to experience it, there are lots of different ways you could explore that. You can go to a place that has a school.
Hmm.
So much like going to a massage school and you're getting
Yep.
people who are learning, you could go to an acupressure or Chinese medicine school usually, and
Hmm.
there will have very discounted rates
Yeah.
to get treatments there. And then they're 100% supervised. So they have
Yeah.
usually a really skilled, experienced person coming in actually with the student. So like they're putting the needles in together, putting in the tabs in the right places. And then the other option also is community acupuncture,
Hmm.
which with those ones, you're usually only on your arms and your legs receiving, or maybe
Hmm.
your head
Yep.
receiving the tabs. But it's where you can go into a room and it's oftentimes they'll have somehow dividers between the
Hmm.
nice big recliner chairs that people sit in and some headphones or something. And so you can kind of just be in your own space, but it
Yep.
allows them to work on multiple people, at once. And that tends to be much cheaper than going to a private one-on-one session. So just some
100%.
other options that are out there.
Yeah. And the other thing too is just ask, be real and say, hey, like I would love to get it. Do you have any packages that you offer? Do you offer any discounted rates? A lot of acupuncturists work for themselves, so they have that flexibility to actually work with you. And yeah, so also just ask too. A lot of them are willing to help out.
Yeah,
And
especially if you're paying out of pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And community acupuncture for pregnancy is great because we're not going to put you on your belly. So we're not going to do a ton of back points. You really can't do too much on the belly, especially after the second trimester. And even then, like it has to be above where the baby's at. So really, community acupuncture is great for pregnancy, and especially most providers, if they're licensed, they will know all the contraindicated points for pregnancy. Like it is drilled into your head and they won't do it. So and they're the type of acupuncturist that will avoid it, whereas some of the specialists will, they might push that boundary a little
Yeah,
bit.
they'll
But
the specialist is working with you one-on-one and knows your
yes,
whole. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I think it's great. I wish everyone could get it because it's just that wants it, of course.
Cool. Well, we will do a follow-up to this with diving into postpartum. That'll be a nice long one. And
Yeah.
then we'll do one for baby and then
Yes.
probably preconception and fertility as well at some point.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
have a whole series of these kind of sprinkled in over the course of the next few months.
And I guess one last thing too is a lot of people worry about like risks and safety. Even the OBGYN community is supportive of acupuncture, they find that risks are very low and it's a very safe thing. So if you're concerned about that, it's generally pretty safe too.
I feel like if insurance is paying for it, it's gotten the Western Medical Golden Star. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so
And there's a
yeah,
ton of research that supports like the effectiveness of it even during pregnancy too. So
yeah. I find it's way more effective than it's given credit for. It's like the
yes.
pros are like way more pro than any of the cons that are
Yeah.
so small, like so minuscule, like the chances of them.
So I agree with the effectiveness. And I just remember I hadn't had acupuncture for a while and I got it again. I was like, oh, this is amazing when you finally get it. And also it's different when you give it to yourself as opposed to like going in and like fully
And
getting
receiving
treated
it.
and yeah, and receiving it. But I was like, oh, this is why people love it. Sometimes you forget when you're in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
The
not
effect,
doing meditation for a while and then you
yes.
meditate and you're like, oh yeah,
Why did I not
welcome
stop doing it?
back.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if you have any questions, you're always
Hmm.
welcome to reach out. And
Yes.
Jen, I'll redirect all those questions to Jen. She'll be happy to answer.
Yes.
We can
Yes.
always reply to you and respond to you.
Yeah.
So please, like, let us know your acupuncture questions. We'd be very
Yes.
curious. But
Yes.
otherwise, happy exploring, and we'll be back with more.
Hey there, amazing listeners. We just want to say a huge thank you for tuning into our convo on the Just This podcast today. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners, and your continued support means the world to us.
If you enjoyed this episode and found value in it, we would be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform or share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it too. Your reviews and shares not only motivate us, but they also help others discover our show.
We're also all about keeping the conversation going and hanging out with our incredible community. Head over to justthis.site, that's justhis.site, where you'll find additional resources, ways to connect with us, and join the conversation, plus some more goodies.
Thank you again for being a part of the Just This community. We'll be back soon. Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and embrace the wonder as you navigate this extraordinary adventure.